Construction of block 2. Here we have our pattern. And here we have our blocks. This is the new block. And this is the original fabric block. I would suggest that this block be done with a paper piece center. So we're going to cut around here, giving ourselves a 1/4 inch outside. And we are going to use that for our paper piece section. So again, we're adding about a 1/4 inch on each piece, cutting it out and using that as our paper piece section. Again, we've prepped all the pieces that we need for this block. And we'll start by using a fussy cut square. And what I'll do is I'll hold it up to the light and I can see through here where my piece is. I can also align it here and put this in the center of where it is. Usually I pin my first piece just to hold it when I'm working. The next thing I do is I choose opposite sides and I will fold on that line and I will fold on this line. And what that does is it transfers a fold mark onto the centerpiece where I can add my fabrics. That's going to be my sewing line. So I'll take the first piece and I'll line it up. And because the centerpiece was cut 2 by 2 and the section is 1.5 finished, I know that I have a 1/4 inch there on the edge. So I'm just going to slide that down. So my piece is in the center of that block. It's lined up with the edge here, which I know is a 1/4 inch away from my seam line. And then I will stitch it, and I'll stitch it with it down like this. So I again shorten my stitch length to about 1.5. I might do 1 or 2 stitches at the beginning to lock it. And then I just sew along that first line and stop. Now, rather than just pull it out, I will chain piece the outside pieces. So I'll line them up and I'll lift this and sew that. Now I have my first piece done. And of course, my scissors are nowhere to be seen. Let me find them. Sorry about that. So I'll trim it. So now I have my first piece with some thread. So I'll trim my threads, both sides. Trim my threads both sides. And then when I fold my piece up, it's all ready to be pressed and I'll go do the next one. I usually do opposites and then opposites. So again, we'll get our next one ready. We'll line it up with our seam allowance. We will put it in the center and again, putting it down, a couple stitches at the beginning, just outside the length of that line and a couple past. And that way it will help hold it in. Cut that one off. And then again, we can chain piece the other side of this one. If I don't have anything else in the block to chain piece, I'll usually work on 2 blocks at once, or I will do maybe a leaders and enders project. So again, we've got our 2 pieces there. Let me just press it. And now we can do the same for the next section. So again, it's the 2 opposite ones. We're going to fold on the line that we want to sew on, which is the marked line. Give it a good press. We're going to flip it and fold on there as well. Again, that fold mark transfers onto here. We will put one on and center the point so we've got enough space on either end. Oh, at this point we may want to trim these little points here. So we'll trim them like that, and we'll trim these ones here. That way we don't have to trim it after our next one. So again, we put it on one of the sides, line it up, put the fabric side down a couple stitches past where we need to be. And again, we'll get this guy out. So there's one side ready. We'll do the other side here. And the reason I like to chain pieces, I don't like to have my loose threads all the time. I find that very distracting. So again, I'll trim the threads, both ends. Trim this side, both ends. And finger press that. Get our next piece ready. Center it, put it on our line, and sew that across. So for the most part, our pieces are pretty close to what we want as a finished side, so there isn't too much trimming, but there might be a bit, and I'll show you with this next section what I mean. Okay. So again, we're going to trim both ends, the threads. Okay. And then we'll give that a press. This is a nice block because it's a fairly simple way of piecing, paper piecing. It's the same thing repeated over and over again. So what we're going to do here is we're going to fold now our next section. So we're going to go this way and this way, then that way and that way. So that's our next section. It's a green that I'm using, a green batik. So again, I'm going to fold this one on my line. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to see if I need to trim. And I do need to trim a little bit there in the center. And back here, it's okay. So again, I'm going to put your next piece there in the center, line it up, fabrics down, and sew that piece together. Now I've run out of things I can piece or chain piece for this block, so I'm just going to grab something from a different block, and this is block 66, so I'll just sew this on. My machine likes chain piecing. If you don't chain piece, I find my threads often bury in my needle plate there, and it's always a hassle to get them out. So again, there's that one. We're going to do the one across, fold on the line, give it a good crease, check here, so we can trim, maybe right across there we'll trim. So we have a little stick out there and that there. We will flip it up, and you know what? We could trim a little bit of this off too. For the most part, you want just a little under 1/4 inch seam. Okay, and then when we sew this on, it's all ready for us. Here we go. Okay, again, fabric down. A couple stitches ahead, a couple stitches past the line. And let's get this guy out to do our chain piecing. Okay. And that one I trimmed pretty close, so there's not too many threads to trim. Okay, now we've got that part done, and again, we're going to press it open. I'm sorry for that background noise. It's my man talking very loudly on the phone. Okay, so now we're at the next piece. So we're going to do these two ones. We're going to, on the outside here, finish off that square. We're going to press on the line, and we're going to check if we need to do some trimming ahead of time, which we will do. You can see we have a bit here and a bit there to trim. So cut that off. Cut that off. You can trim also with a rotary cutter, and if you did, what you would do is you would fold actually back on that line. Fold it back on that line, and you'd see everything that's sticking out, and you would just run your rotary cutter along there on your board. I find for some of these smaller pieces, and since I'm sewing here, I can just do it quite easily with my scissors. Short scissors would be harder. Longer scissors give you a straighter edge. Okay, so we're going to do this next section. I actually sewed that one the wrong way up. But hopefully I'll check and see if I actually sewed on the line. Hopefully that I did, because I trimmed it nicely. So let's just add this piece from our other blocks, and we'll just double check this. So, I mean, goodness gracious, that went right on the line there, so it's okay. So again, we flip that up, give it a bit finger press, and we add the last piece in this go round. Again, line it up with the crease. You don't really need to trim anything on this one. That one's pretty good. Fabric down. And again, I'm sewing straight on that line. Get my other piece ready. Oh, I've lost one of the little bits. Let me grab one. Okay. So that way I work on two blocks at the same time. Usually one is a little simpler than the other. So again, I trim my threads, both sides. I check over here. Now I can give this a little trim. Not too much, just a little bit to straighten that edge out. Okay, and then again, we're going to press. And you'll see here what paper piecing does. It gives you these lovely points where your pieces are supposed to match up. Okay, so now we have one more to go around. And again, we're going to take our opposites and we're going to fold on the line. As you work on this, you'll get yourself a little system that works. So it's fold, trim. So this one's a little wider than a 1/4 inch. So we'll give this a little trim. Sometimes you need to pull up a little bit off the paper. Okay, so again, I can see my folded line. I'm not sure if you can or not, but I'm just trimming that on my folded line. And I'll do this one at the same time. Again, it's a little bit more than a 1/4 inch there. So we'll just give that a little trim. And what trimming that helps us with is that when we line up our next piece, we're on a 1/4 inch seam to start with. So again, we're going to put that on. We're going to move it over just a little bit so the point's right in the center of the center block. So we know we've got enough on both sides. Flip it down. Now this one is our last piece, and we're going to go past maybe right to the edge of the paper on this one. I'll show you what I mean. Let's get this out of the way. Get myself another little one to sew up. Okay, grab this and my scissors. Again, we're going to trim our threads. And when we sew this, we will see that we're actually now almost off the paper, which is where we're going to trim up the next piece, because that's going to bring us right to our 1/4 inch. And again, we're going to do the opposite side. Give it a finger press here just to keep it out of the way. Flip it over. Let's do it right this time. And again, probably right off the edge of the paper if you've allowed for your 1/4 inch. Let's get this mess out of the way. Okay. So we're almost done here. We've got 2 more pieces to add, and then we can add our border. So let's get, let's get this little connector corner going here. And don't worry, you'll see the full sewing tutorial for block 61, I think it was. Okay, so now we've got a good press to hold those guys down. So taking the time to press too gives you really nice edges. And again, you'll see here those lovely points we have. Again, we're going to fold over our line on our lines. Okay. And we're going to see where our mark is. And again, we can take a little bit off of here. So pull back the paper a little bit. So what I do when I pull back the paper is I just keep the stitches in line, but keep the paper out of the way. So. Now you can stitch down your piece and then flip it and trim, but by doing it this way, I have a nice, give myself a nice 1/4 inch line. Let's just take that little bit off there. And again, I know that when I sew it, I've got my 1/4 inch and I've got enough to go to the edge there. So again, right almost from the edge of the paper, right off. And we'll do another one of those. I really do love chain piecing. I imagine if you had a machine with a really nice cut stitch that held it, it would be lovely to have. Again, so we're going to finger press this out to the edge. And we've already folded this one, but I need to give it a bit of a trim. So we'll trim that. Okay. And our last piece here. I love doing this because when I get to the next block, it's a lot of the work has already been done. A lot of the construction has already been done. Okay, so now we have our center fully paper piece. Let me press that for you. And now what I would do is take it over to my cutting board and I will put my ruler on here and add myself a 1/4 inch, trim that all up. When that's trimmed, I can then add my 2 side pieces, press those and add my other 2 side pieces, and the block is done. And that is a paper pieced block. Again, one of the simple ones because it's only got one central component that had 1, 2, 3 layers to add, which meant it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 pieces there plus the centerpiece. I hope that helps on the construction of this block.